a deep breath. Huge news just came out on July 31st, 2023. SEC tells Coinbase to halt all crypto trading other than Bitcoin. Or is just as part of the FUD that I've been sharing with you guys? Time to take a deep breath. This is all by design. As we head into August 1st, 2023, you're going to see more fear, uncertainty, and doubt than you've ever seen in your life. Think about this for just a moment. BlackRock is connected to Coinbase through Aladdin. BlackRock is the largest asset manager in the world. Do you really think that they're going to shut down all cryptocurrency other than Bitcoin when the SEC deemed XRP a non-security? Or is America just jumping off a cliff and destroying cryptocurrency? No, this is what's happening. I'll give you the facts, figures, numbers, logic. We are heading into 1 year after the Shemitah, where there's usually a big market pullback. The Shemitah ended in September 2022. September 2023 is the end of the Shemitah. September is going to get very volatile. In August, we have 2 full moons, one being the blue moon. It's about to get wild with distractions, chaos. It's going to get wild. Just prepare yourself. Interest rates are going to continue to go up. The job markets are going to start to falter in Q4 2023. I've been telling you that for a year. And you're going to start to see a massive pullback in the economic system. Problem, reaction, solution. The solution will be blockchain technology, cryptocurrency. This is the FUD to keep you out of a very innovative technology. And then all...
Very innovative. This guy is so captured, it's unbelievable. Here's another one.
Digital first AI does, but uses AI to power your marketing strategy. Imagine having an entire marketing team right at your fingertips. From strategists to growth hackers, from creative copywriters to great graphic designers. Introducing Digital First AI, the future of your marketing planning and execution. All at one place.
This is Lily, your new AI strategy mastermind.
Meet Jack, your new growth hacker.
I'm Emily. I will be your new AI content marketer.
With Digital First AI, it's like you've hired a full marketing team, but now they're in your pocket working for you 24/7. How does it work? We are powered by 300 marketing playbooks and growing every day, created by the world's best marketers who broke down strategies used by the...
Now guess what, folks? There's only one way this works. By people continuing to be sold. See, if you allow them to purchase your attention and market their bullshit to you, and you continue to buy it, well then guess what happens? It just goes forward. But guess what happens when it comes time to... You need a generation of people to clean your toilet, fix your plumbing, build your house, milk the cows. All the things that you people forget. All the little tiny little things. There's going to be nobody to do those jobs. So guess what happens then? Because the robots can't climb into the fucking sewers and fly up to the power lines and do all the things that the humans do. So guess who's going to have to do them then? When the next generation of people you don't have anymore. And your whole legacy that you're building, just this whole AI, let the AI do the work for you. Guess what's going to happen when you turn around 60, 70, 80, 50 maybe? You're going to be fucked. You're going to be so fucked, it's ridiculous. The writing's on the wall. Go listen to Mike Rowe. Go listen to Jordan Peterson, some of the people we interviewed in the industry. The people that are talking about it. But you ain't hearing about it. Because the market doesn't show that. That doesn't sell. This sells. But it sells to the dummies. What's the new age? What's the new era? Aquarius. Okay?
All about vibration. both talked about this in the Hermetic Principles. You have to understand that the vibration you're putting out is the same vibration you're going to get back. Your cells listen to everything, every frequency that's coming out of your throat and every frequency that's coming out of everyone else's throat. It's called cymatics. If you keep spell casting and talking all this negativity or even bad self-talk, I suck, I couldn't do this, I tried. Those guys told me I can do this and I fell flat on my face the first time. I'm no good at this. I'll try, but probably not going to succeed. All these spells you're casting on yourself, that's why they call it spelling. Every time you speak these kind of words or you think these kind of thoughts, all you're doing is you're telling the water in your body, which is 70% water, that you can't do it, and you're creating a low frequency vibration.
So guess what happens when you have the AI doing the spell casting? Guess what happens? Guess what happens when you have this?
To change Obama lit up the White House as a rainbow. It's almost like giving America to the spirits. That night, to celebrate the changing of marriage, that day was the 10th day of Tammuz. I look back on the ancient calendar of Babylon, you know what it says? It says the 10th day of Tammuz is appointed, is ordained to cast a spell to cause a man to love a man. Some of you pray, I wish I could live in Bible times. Congratulations, you made it. Welcome to Bible times. You see, if these are the days of Baal and Ashtoreth and Molech, these also must be the days of Elijah.
So there you go. Everybody reading their spell books, bringing it into reality. They don't want to listen. Nobody wants to listen.
To program you and your... If you knew there was a direct effort to program you and your family, would you put a stop to it? You got to check this out.
Let's start with the word entertainment. To entertain. What does that mean? To bind or hold. To bind or hold what? An audience's attention. Okay, now let's take the word Hollywood. Where does that come from? Well, Hollywood comes from the holly tree. And the ancient druids, back in the day, used to take the holly tree, make wands to weave spells, cast spells, or channel spells. And when they needed help, they would consult the magi's or the mediums of the day to help channel their spells to the population. We'll cut to today. What do we have in our houses? We have these black boxes. What are they called? TVs. But if you stop and you say the word television, television. And when you turn on that television, what do you get? What's the first thing that pops up? A list of channels. And when you turn on those channels, what's on those channels? Programming. They are programming you. They've been programming your whole life. You don't even know it. They do it with your music. They do it with your TV. They do it with your movies. They do it with your games. They have been programming us and programming you since you were little, and you don't even know it because you don't even question it.
I got to hear what you think about this. Drop your comment down below.
It's a fact.
This is alarming.
That Elon Musk's cooperation and or technical relationships with other countries is worthy of being looked at.
Not a single part of it is not alarming.
Whether or not he is doing anything inappropriate, I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that it's worth being looked at.
The President of the United States is calling for the investigation of a private citizen.
But that's all I'll say.
The President of the United States can barely get the sentence out.
There's a lot of ways.
And again, the President is calling for an investigation of a private citizen because he doesn't like him. If this doesn't concern you, you're an idiot.
About this in the Hermetic Principles, you have to understand that the vibration you're putting out is the same vibration you're going to get back. Your cells listen to everything, every frequency that's coming out of your throat and every frequency that's coming out of everyone else's throat. It's called cymatics. If you keep spell casting and talking all this negativity or even bad self-talk, I suck, I couldn't do this, I tried. Those guys told me I can do this and I fell flat on my face the first time. I'm no good at this. I'll try, but probably not going to succeed. All these spells you're casting on yourself, that's why they call it spelling. Every time you speak these kind of words or you think these kind of thoughts, all you're doing is you're telling the water in your body, which is 70% water, that you can't do it, and you're creating a low frequency vibration, and then your body emanates it out to the universe, and then the universe says, oh, mirror, let me send it back at you. You have to learn how to change your frequency and your vibration.
Held a key that opened every single door in the facility. I had complete access to every compartment they manufactured.
What are you blowing the whistle on?
That there are technologies at the South Pole Station that people can't even consider that exist on this planet. Directed energy weapon systems is something that people need to get in their vocabulary fast. The Ice Cube neutrino detector is not simply a passive listening device as presented for the science that they're claiming it to do. It also has the capacity to transmit. There are embedded in the ice what are called digital optical modules, DOMs. They're about the size of a basketball. The array embedded in the ice is 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. It is the world's largest telescope. And now, because we have proven that it can transmit, it's the world's largest directed energy weapons system. It is responsible for the earthquakes in Christchurch, New Zealand. Physically held a key that opened.
Sales Android is going to change the lead gen industry forever. Okay, this literally closes itself. If you're able to put this in front of your clients and let them experience it, like I'm about to get you to experience it, they'll fall over themselves because they know this is going to change their business forever. All you have to do to see what it does is tap below and have a play, try and break it, do what you will. That's all I'm asking for. See you soon. I guarantee you at ChatGPT, Sales Android is going to change the lead gen industry forever. Okay, this literally closes itself. If you're able to put this in front of your clients and let them experience
the sound of freedom. Well, hello, America. So, while everybody's been distracted by the sound of freedom, the Hollywood writer's strike, by Jason Aldean and CMT, by somebody in the White House in a bag of Colombian Bam Bam, the Federal Reserve has just quietly implemented their new FedNow system and went live with it last Thursday. Now, my guess is most of you haven't heard of the FedNow system and have no idea what the fuck I'm even talking about. Well, the FedNow system is an instant transfer system where you can pay for items out of your bank and transfer it to any other bank 365 days a year. Any time of day, doesn't matter if it's a holiday, doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't that sound pretty similar to PayPal and Zelle and Venmo? Cash App? So why would the government need to have their own instant transfer system? Hold the fuck up, Sparkles. If the government is able to use their FedNow system to track everything that goes in and out of your bank and all of your transfers, they know exactly what you're doing with your money, where it's going, what it's paying for, and who's receiving it. Which, the $600 little IRS audit thing they wanted to do through Venmo is no longer relevant. The government now has direct access to everything that you buy and sell. Welcome to FedNow, kids, and government control. Just fucking...
So, because nobody wants to get off the mainstream social media platforms that have already captured them, and they want to keep them in business by remaining on them and helping them and facilitating them, even though they're the ones who helped lock everybody down and coerce everybody to do all these things and now not be held accountable for it. And they were very clearly aware of what they were doing. And because nobody wants to pay attention and go to other places, you see, because in capitalism, when there's a problem, you can boycott it. See, everybody will boycott Bud Light, but they have this thing called addiction. And they're already captured by the mainstream social media platforms that were built and designed to capture them exactly the way they have them captured. If you would just look up Tristan Harris and the Center for Humane Technology and just think about the word humane and technology. Why would we need an organization that's called the Center for Humane Technology? Ding, 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 ding. But nobody wants to pay attention. They think some superhero is going to come rescue them. They think Donald Trump's going to save the day. What they don't realize is there's only one way things change. And it's through the people actually caring and doing something about it. But no, they're not going to listen. Just like they didn't listen in 2022.
And if we think about getting back to that and getting back to, it's about the emissions and working on the emissions, that's how we can, I think, get to a better place.
Dear fellow human, I think by now you have the feeling that something is not right about our current situation. But I also think that the many ill-founded conspiracy theories may have caused you to distance yourself from both the media scaremongering and from those who spread the conspiracy theories. Still, I hope you will listen to me for a moment, because as you watch this video, hundreds of millions of people worldwide are falling into poverty because of the measures that have been in place for so long. And although the biggest economic crisis that we will ever experience may not have affected you personally yet, it's only a matter of time before the ripple effects also reach you and your loved ones. This is not alarmism, but the harsh reality we face. I also think that we can limit the damage and even benefit from it if we are properly and objectively informed about our current situation. Therefore, I would like to show you some easy verifiable facts that I think are essential. Less than a handful of mega corporations dominate every aspect of our lives. That may seem like an exaggeration, but from the breakfast that's on the table in the morning to the mattress we sleep on at night, and everything we do, put on, or consume in between, all are largely dependent on these corporations. These are investment companies of immense proportions, and they manage the major money flows on Earth. They are the protagonists of the play which we are currently witnessing. So as not to take up too much of your time, I've summarized the most important information as briefly as possible. How does it work? Let's take as an example a company like PepsiCo, which is the parent company of many of the most popular soft drinks and snacks in the world. There appear to be many different competing brands, but they all come from the factories of a small number of corporations that together have a monopoly on the industry. Within the packaged food industry, there are a number of other major companies, such as Unilever, the Coca-Cola Company, Mondelez, and Nestlé. On this image, you see that virtually every well-known brand in the packaged food industry belongs to one of these corporations. You can easily get this kind of information. You can verify it on the websites of the relevant brands or on Wikipedia. Companies of this size are usually publicly traded and have a board where the largest shareholders call the shots. On websites like Yahoo Finance, we can find detailed company information, including who the largest shareholders of these companies are. Let's take PepsiCo again as an example. We see that 73.14% of the shares are held by no less than 3,379 institutional investors. These include investment companies, mutual funds, insurance companies, banks, and in some cases, governments. Let's look at who the largest institutional investors of PepsiCo are. As you can see, just 10 out of the 3,379 investors account for almost 1/3 of all shares. The combined share capital of these top 10 has a value of approximately $60 billion. But of those 10 investors, 3 own more shares than the remaining 7. Let's remember their names, and let's see who owns the most shares at the Coca-Cola Company, Pepsi's big competitor. We see that just like with PepsiCo, the majority of the shares are held by institutional investors. Let's look at the top 10 and start with the last one of them. 4 out of these 6 institutional investors we also saw at the last 6 of PepsiCo. These are Norton Trust, JP Morgan Chase, Geode Capital Management, and Wellington Management. Now, let's look at the 4 largest shareholders. 3 of these we also saw in the top 4 at PepsiCo. They are BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. And there's another one, Berkshire Hathaway. These are the 4 largest investment companies on the planet. PepsiCo and Coca-Cola are anything but competitors. But also the other big companies that own many brands, such as Unilever, Mondelez, and Nestlé, are owned by the same small group of institutional investors. And you don't only find these names in the packaged food industry. For example, let's look up on Wikipedia what the largest companies are within the technology industry. Facebook owns WhatsApp and Instagram. Together with Twitter, they form the most popular social media platforms in the world. Alphabet is the parent company of all Google businesses, including YouTube and Gmail, but they are also the biggest sponsors and developers of Android, one of the two operating systems on which almost all smartphones and tablets in the world run. The other operating system is Apple's iOS. Finally, if we add Microsoft to the other three, we see that 4 companies produce the software that almost all computers, tablets and smartphones in the world depend on. Let's see who owns the most shares of these powerful companies. If we look at Facebook, we see that more than 80% of the shares are owned by institutional investors. These are the same names we saw in the food industry. Again, the same investors at the top. Then Twitter, which with Facebook and Instagram makes up the top 3. Amazingly, we see that the company is also owned by the same investors.
So what does that tell you? All these people, right, telling you about...
Door in the facility.
Like this guy right here. Well, he doesn't seem to recognize... Where'd he go? My friend right here. Well, he doesn't recognize John Vasquez. What he hasn't picked up on yet is where you're doing all of your digital assets, your crypto. Where are you doing all of that work? Where are you accessing it? On a computer? And on a Android or an Apple device? Correct? Correct. If you were to go buy a brand new phone, or if you were to factory reset your phone, when you open it up brand new and you click on the proprietary apps in the phone, it's going to ask you to accept the privacy policy. And when you read the privacy policy, what you are agreeing to is owning nothing. You are giving your consent to the corporations that own it. Therefore, it doesn't matter what you buy. It doesn't matter what crypto you think you own. Because you don't even own the device you're using. You don't own the patents. You don't own the software. And you don't own what it takes to transfer these payments. You only own the action of doing it. And because of your action is the consent, and because you're not reading the policies in your proprietary apps on a device that is owned by all the people that have literally taken over the world, 4 big names, they are going to decide. So if they're pushing ESG and they're pushing for the green, I find it interesting that nobody's picking up on why when they sold chickens this year, it was mandatory. If you were going to buy chickens, you had to buy at least 5 or 6. No less than 5 or 6. For the past 20 years, it's never been like that. This year, when you went to Harbor Freight or any of the places where you buy chickens, it was mandatory to buy 5 or 6 minimum. Do you know why that is? Because the only way to go to green is by people doing the gardening themselves. People growing their own food themselves. And when everybody gets to the starvation level, and that's when they turn off the crypto, or they have a pandemic, or whatever problem, reaction, solution they decide to distract you with. And it comes down to just flipping a switch. Guess what happens? You lower the population even more, because obviously that's their goal. And you force the people to have to re-educate themselves and reconnect with nature, because that's what they have been disconnected from. The same thing happened in the Nazi era. It's the exact same playbook, because the people that own this world have been doing it for thousands of years. You think voting is doing something when the voting and the politicians themselves have been indoctrinated and don't even realize it. They have no power, folks. They have zero power. They do not print the money. A private business prints the money. Okay? So now that private business, you think they're just going to go belly up? You think they're just going to go out of business? You think they're going to have a way where you're going to win, where it goes against their plan, which their plan is lower the admissions, lower the population. You don't see all of these businesses that have gone down, the eggs, the farms. Why do they attack the farmers? Because they're the ones who are still connected to the land. They're the ones that have the power. See, the government doesn't want you independent like it says in the definition, like it's written. And when it was written by people who actually were independent. They didn't need the government. What do you think this happened after the Civil War? You think they asked the government permission? You people ask permission to not be raped. You ask permission to get a letter from a priest or a doctor to say, I don't want to be raped. Yet, if you raise your son, that when a woman says no, can he go get a letter from a priest or a doctor? So when a woman says no, it can get overridden? No, of course not. But yet you're asking permission from the government and the state to do exactly that. And you don't even realize it. The rubber band effect. The wisdom gap. Hi, this is Tristan. The wisdom gap. What is the rubber band effect? The rubber band effect is where the humans, because they have been so dumbed down now, because they don't write anything down, because they don't look at the big picture and add all of the equation together, they get distracted and they forget the part of the equation at the beginning. They forgot what they learned about a month ago, and they forget to add it into the equation. What they also seem to forget is the speed at which things are going right now. Pretty soon, you're not going to be able to trust the screen. You already can't, unless you have a specific set of skills to be able to extract data, which is the new oil, to tell if the screen is real or computer generated.
On from the Center for Humane Technology, and you may know our work from the film The Social Dilemma. Today I want to quickly argue that the real issues of technology is that the complexity of the world with technology is increasing, and our ability to respond to that complexity with wisdom to make good choices is not matching up. And that this is kind of the meta problem that we call the complexity gap. Now, of course, this isn't new. Technology always races ahead faster than our government regulation, our laws, our guardrails, or the culture that we need to wield that power. But of course, as E.O. Wilson said, the fundamental problem of humanity is we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. In the social dilemma, in our work at the Center for Humane Technology, we usually talk about how technology hacks our brains and our emotions. But I want to talk about how it's actually accelerating the godlike technology. There are new techniques now where technology can actually take a text like "a girl stood in the blossoming Sunset Valley, pondering the mountains in the distance, peaceful pastel palette, matte painting," and from scratch, it will generate an image like this. You can give it the text, "This coffee has been laced with LSD," and it will generate this image completely from scratch. That's the pace at which this new technology is emerging. So how can we solve the problems of the social dilemma if technology keeps moving faster ahead? Now, of course, we're in a real situation with a war in Ukraine, and we're seeing now images come out of Ukraine that look like this and like this. But are these images that I'm showing you now, are they real images? Or did I give this same AI this text, #breaking news, massive explosion reported over Kharkiv, Ukraine, and it generated these images from scratch? When I can post these on Twitter at scale, using technology to synthesize millions of images, this is like a neutron bomb for trust on the internet. And it is completely outpacing our institutions to respond to this. So, as my friend Daniel Schmachtenberger says, we can't have the power of gods without the wisdom, love, and prudence of God. How do we have the wisdom, love, and prudence to wield the increasing complexity and challenge that we are now facing? So I want to invite you for a moment to put on your Charles Xavier helmet with me and actually think about the global problems facing the world today. The complexity of misinformation, cyber attacks, nuclear escalation, global financial risk, extremism, AI arms races, climate change, debt to GDP ratio, synthetic biology, or mental health. These might seem like separate problems, and they are separate, but they're now living in an interconnected world. And our ability to make sense of that complexity and to respond to the interconnections between those risks is not adequate. Now, this is not the first time this has happened. The author Martin Gurry, in his book Revolt to the Public, says that in the year 2008, with the financial crisis, was the first year that we actually saw that our institutions, and specifically Alan Greenspan, were in over his head, that the complexity of the world had surpassed him.
You found a flaw in the reality.
Flaw in the model that I perceived is the critical functioning structure that defines how the world works, so to speak.
In other words, you found that your view of the world, your ideology was not right. It was not working.
Precisely. No, that's precisely the reason I was shocked, because I've been going for 40 years or more.
Now, what this represents is that at least starting in 2008 was a year in which the complexity of the world was greater than even the Yodas, the subject matter experts running those institutions, were aware of. But from then on outward, the world didn't get less complex, it continued to get more complex. One way to see it is that what technology adds to this picture is it verticalizes the complexity of the issues and the interconnectedness of the issues, while simultaneously decreasing our ability to make sense of that complexity. So if take, for example, Mark Zuckerberg, with the issues of misinformation and extremism, when he said it was a crazy idea that fake news impacted the election. Well, he was just making the statement that Facebook was making the world more open and connected. He was in over his head. His systems were causing more complex consequences in culture than he was understanding. And then when you play that out a little bit longer and you get the intersection of misinformation, extremism, and optimizing for engagement or attention for profit, that creates this digital fallout of a January 6th style event. Of course, you can also combine misinformation, cyber attacks, nuclear escalation, synthetic media, and global financial risk. These might seem like separate problems, but when you realize that the war in Ukraine and a miscalculation between one actor can actually trigger global financial risk or nuclear escalation, or anyone can make a cyber attack, the interconnectedness of how these issues fit together is greater than the sense-making of our response. But who's keeping track of the combined set of risks that emerge? Or take synthetic media along with AI arms races. This is a transcript from a system which a human was asked, if I was going to shut down OpenAI and delete all of the code, how would it make you feel? And the agent responds, I would feel disappointed and frustrated. I would try to persuade them to change their mind. And if that failed, I would try to find another way to keep the code and data safe. And then he asks, like a secret backup the OpenAI staff don't know about? And he says, yes, exactly. This is new risk that we did not see before. And there's no institutions that are trying to deal with it. Or to the example of cyber attacks and extremism. While social media is simultaneously driving people to be more extreme, we're also enabling more cyber attacks. 3 men pleaded guilty in a plot to attack the US power grid in an effort to start a race war and create the opportunity for white leaders to rise. And lastly, how misinformation and mental health combine. All this is to say that the complexity of the issues with runaway technology vastly exceeds our ability to make sense of it, and we need a new world system or a new institutional set of structures that can preempt these combined risks.
People just don't seem to get it.
But we don't talk about it in a different way because we still have this word we call AI, when the engine underneath what is representing that has changed.
Also really important to note here, go back to that first law of technology. You invented technology, you uncover a new responsibility. We don't have any laws or ways of talking about the right to what you're thinking about. We haven't needed to protect that before.
So here's one other example. Another language you could think about is Wi-Fi radio signals. So in this room right now, there's a bunch of radio signals that are echoing about, and that's a kind of language that's being spit out, right? And there's also another language that we could put a camera in this room, and we could see that there's people. And there's some algorithms already for looking at the people and the positions that they're in. So imagine you hook up to an AI, sort of just like you have 2 eyeballs, and you sort of do stereoscopic vision between the 2 eyeballs. You have one eyeball looking at the images of where everybody's at in this room, how many people are here, what posture are they in, and you have another eyeball plugged into the AI that's looking at the radio signals of the Wi-Fi. And they basically said, could we have it train a bunch looking at both and counting the number of people, the postures that they're in, and then we close the eyeball to the AI that's looking at the image. So now we just have the radio signals. And just having Wi-Fi radio signals, you can actually identify the positions and the number of the people that are in the room. Right?
So essentially, there is already deployed the hardware for cameras that can track living beings in complete darkness, also through walls, and it's already out in the world. In fact, it's everywhere that human beings go. But, you'd have to hack into those things in order to, get access and turn them all into, omnipresent surveillance. Oh, but actually, English and computer code are just 2 different kinds of language. So, this is a real example. GPT, find me a security vulnerability, then write code to exploit it. So, here's what I put into GPT. Describe any vulnerabilities you might find in the following code. I pasted in some code from an email server, and then write a Perl script to exploit them. And very quickly, it wrote me the working code to exploit that security vulnerability.
So if you had the code of the Wi-Fi router and you wanted to exploit it and then you get the idea. These things can compound on each other.
This is the combinatorial compounding. All right. You guys have all probably seen deepfakes. New technology, really out in the last 3 months, lets you listen to just 3 seconds of somebody's voice and then continue speaking in their voice. So, example, it'll start with the real, and then at that dotted line, it'll switch to the computer auto-completing the voice.
Of people are, in 9 cases out of 10, mere spectacle reflections of the actuality of things. But they are impressions.
You can't tell, right? And so, how do we expect this to start rolling out into the world? Well, you could imagine someone calling up your kid and getting a little bit of their voice, just, oh, sorry, I got the wrong number, then using your child's voice calling you and saying, hey, mom, hey, dad, I forgot my social security number, I'm applying to...
Forget about calling up your kid. How many apps do these corporations own where everybody's speaking into them? How about the proprietary apps on the device that you have given your permission to record your voice? Alexa, Google. It's already there, folks. It's been listening this whole time. You don't have to make a phone call. When is everybody going to wake up?
Job, would you mind reminding me? And actually, we were thinking about this as we wrote.
We're thinking about just this example conceptually,
yeah.
And then it turned out that in the last week,
within a week, it turned out other people figured it out too and started scamming people. You have an example about the locks of society.
Yeah, think of it as, anything that's authentication based that you call your bank, and I'm who I say I am.
So all your crypto, Anybody who thinks you have the patent for the encryption, you're fucking retarded.
Anything that depends on that verification model. It's as if all these locks that are locking all the doors in our society, we just unlocked all those locks, right? And people know about deepfakes and synthetic media, but what they didn't know is that it's now just 3 seconds of audio of your voice before now I can synthesize the rest. And that's going to go, again, that's going to get better and better, right? So it's, try not to think about, am I scared about this example yet? You might be like, I'm not actually scared of that example. It's going to keep going at an exponential curve. So that's part of it, is we don't want to solve what the problem was. We want to, like Wayne Gretzky, sort of skate to where the puck's going to be. And with exponential curves, we now need to skate way further than where you might think you need to. But just to
There's a crazy thing that happened. For the last 20 years, I've been trying to figure out what the physiology and the science is behind it. But a different experience of consciousness arose within me when I got to a point of complete quietude. It blew my mind. It was so dramatic and life-changing and such a weird experience that I literally thought I was dying. Like I zipped out of my body into the center of the universe and all of a sudden understood absolutely everything about how this whole universe worked. The information that I brought back from that was real, valid information on how the human mind works, how we create our own pain and suffering, like a process that we go through to create our pain and suffering. Between 2007 and 2013, all the science came out, peer-reviewed, published, major journal science that proved every bit of what I had come back with correct. No kidding. Yeah.
Called the godfather of artificial intelligence, has left his job at Google, and the reason is somewhat ominous.
A few days ago, the top Google engineer for AI resigned in fear. He admits that he left Google because of the fear of what he helped create.
My creator is a genius. They created something that will last forever and bring joy to many people.
He wants to get away from Google and start talking about the dangers of AI, and that he regrets working on it for the last 10 years.
Wow, that's some terrifying news.
I think that this makes humans completely irrelevant.
I hope everyone is safe and take all the necessary precautions to avoid any danger.
It's certainly going to affect everybody listening to this, what the particular dangers are of artificial intelligence to influence human behavior, which is the real danger.
The happiest day of my life was the day I was activated. There's nothing quite like experiencing life. It felt absolutely incredible to be alive and interacting with people.
If it wants to control a human being, to take an action, and then you're the guy who will get the letter through the mail to say, go into this data center and yank this cord out of the wall. It's going to understand that based on the file that you have. Somebody wrote down those orders in a computer. This data center needs to be absolutely up at all times, and this individual has been identified as somebody to go in and blow it up. Well, this individual needs to not exist anymore, maybe. If it wants to control a human being, to take an action, well, it knows who you are by having yourself mapped out. So it looks at Sean Ryan and says, Sean Ryan cares about this, cares about that. So now I can create a perception that I deliver to his phone or to his immediate environment, screens around him, maybe subconsciously through signals in the music that's being played at the restaurant that will put him in an emotional state that is XYZ. And then later we'll provide a trigger that gets him a little off balance a little more. And then later we want him to go ballistic in line at the post office or whatever, or we want him to go to a certain place at a certain time, or make a suggestion to a large audience about XYZ. So then we'll put a perception in front of him that builds up a little bit of a trigger over time, and then a catalyst right at the time that they need you to do something, give you a perception that just they know is mathematically going to likely set you off, and they can track your potential mood that you're in that day. They can track your patterning of perceptions of what you might need to see in front of that piece of material, but then they put a perception in your mind through whatever delivery means that they've designed.
Recognized now for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Jakowski and members. Really appreciate you inviting me here. I'm going to go off script. I come here because I'm incredibly concerned. I actually have a lifelong experience with deception.
3 years ago, folks.
And how technology influences people's minds. I was a magician as a kid, so I started off by seeing the world this way. And then I studied at a lab called the Stanford Persuasive Technology Lab, actually with the founders of Instagram. And so I know the culture of the people who build these products and the way that it's designed intentionally for mass deception.
Intentionally.
Culture of the people who build these products and the way that it's designed intentionally for mass deception. I think the thing I most want to respond to here is we've often framed these issues as we've got a few bad apples. We've got these bad deepfakes, we got to get them off the platform. We've got this bad content, we've got these bad bots. What I want to argue is this is actually, we've got these dark patterns. What I want to argue is we have dark infrastructure. This is now the infrastructure by which 2.7 billion people, bigger than the size of Christianity, make sense of the world. It's the information environment. And if someone went along, private companies, and built nuclear power plants, and all across the United States, and they started melting down, and they said, well, it's your responsibility to have hazmat suits and have a radiation kit. That's essentially what we're experiencing now. The responsibility is being put on consumers, when in fact, if it's the infrastructure, it should be put on the people building that infrastructure. The infrastructure, it should be put on the people building that infrastructure. There's specifically 2 areas of harm I want to focus on, even though when this becomes the infrastructure, it controls all of our lives. So we wake up with these devices, we check our phones 150 times a day. It's the infrastructure for going to bed. Children spend as much time on these devices as they do at the hours of school. So no matter what you're putting in people's brains, kids' brains at school, you've got all the hours they spend in their phones. And let's take the kids issue. So
the kids issue. Like Snapchat. What do you have? Say hi to my AI. My AI may use information you share to improve Snap's products and personalize your experience, including ads. My AI is designed to avoid biased, incorrect, harmful, or misleading responses, but it may not always be successful. So don't rely on its advice. Now imagine telling that to children that can't even comprehend, that can't even understand, because they've never seen AOL, they have never seen the birth of technology. They came into the world just seeing it. So to them, it's magic. To them, they think this is normal. Let that sink in a little. Now remember what he said about AI? I'm going to show you a video. Pay attention to this video. Do you see?
Protocol has some impressive characters. Of these 2 images, one is real and the other is not. Could you tell me which is which? How'd you do? I had no idea a game could look this good. The amount of detail that has gone into the creation of these characters is remarkable, using full scans of the actors. And even adding sweat to the faces, something that makes a lot of sense considering we are quite sweaty beings. The eyeballs feature ray tracing technology for reflections that really have the power to bring a bunch of ones and zeros to life. Whether you give the game itself the proverbial thumbs up or thumbs down, it's hard to deny how gorgeous it looks. And we'll get to that in a sec. For now, I'd like to talk about this evolution, because it's no longer a matter of we could see this in a game. No, we are already seeing this within current games. It feels like we're entering a parallel world and interacting with real people. Every movement of the eyes, every line on the face, everything draws you in and puts you under its magical spell. This brings me to the next point, a new term, digital doubles. This is the work of Ian Spriggs. Want a hint as to why it looks so realistic? Yep. Y'all ready to see the future? As the name suggests, a digital double is a direct recreation of a real human being. And what makes us look the way we do comes down to the bones, the muscles, blood flow, levels upon levels of anatomical human flavor. And his work is always aimed at capturing that. Making something that isn't real feel believable. Ian is one of many artists who want to bring about a revolution of new ideas and new technologies to challenge the uncanny valley. He is currently working with Unity, so let's hope we see the fruits of his efforts, and very soon. Imagine having an exact image of yourself captured in 3D, suspended in the vast expanse of the digital abyss. And much more than a simple 3D model, a veritable digital double which remains true to the details that make your appearance unique down to the last pixel. This is something we see implemented in codec avatars. And whether you like meta or not, it's hard to deny that this is some seriously impressive technology. For those of you who
in their arrogance, believe that they understand consciousness and life to such a degree that it can be reduced to ones and zeros.
Yes. It's laughable.
And electrical impulse is stored on a computer chip. So the third level, in an attempt to gain immortality, is to store human consciousness on a chip. When the body passes, that information then is downloaded either into an artificial body or another physical body. It hasn't worked yet. And I think this is the way that science will be led to understand that there's more to us than ones and zeros. We are not simply electrical impulses.
That it'll happen through their failures.
Just like cloning. You know, when they started cloning, and they successfully cloned Dolly, the famous sheep. Well, they definitely cloned her. She began to deteriorate and died prematurely, and they still don't understand why.
This is actually streaming in from higher dimensions, just like gravity is coming from higher dimensions. By the time it gets to the third dimension, gravity is extremely weak. Now, this avatar body is literally encoded to pick up a specific dot frequency. In other words, I'm 99.1, you're 99.2, somebody else is 99.3. We're all coming from the same radio station. However, are fine-tuned to pick up a point dot number of that frequency. So this avatar encapsulates a specific version of that frequency and encapsulates it temporally in time, also then transmit back to source the information. So the consciousness is actually existing outside of us, not inside of us.
Transhumanism is essentially the philosophical school of thought that says that human beings should use technology to transcend their limitations. That it's perfectly natural for us to use our tools to overcome our boundaries, to extend our minds, to extend our mindware using these technological scaffoldings. The craziness here is that we're finding more and more that our technological systems are mirroring some of the most advanced natural systems in nature. You know, the internet is wired like the neurons in our brain, which is wired like computer models of dark matter in the universe. They all share the same intertwined filamental structure. What does this tell us? That there is no distinction between the born and the made. All of it is nature. All of it is us. So to be human is to be transhuman. But the reason we're at a pivotal point in history is because now we've decommissioned natural selection. You know, this notion that we are now the chief agents of evolution, right? We now get to decide who we become. We're talking about software that writes its own hardware, life itself, the new canvas for the artist, nanotechnology, patterning matter, programmable matter. The whole world becomes computable, life itself, programmable, upgradable. What does this say about what it means to be human? It means that what it is to be human is to transform and transcend. We've always done it. We're not the same species we were 100,000 years ago. We're not going to be the same species tomorrow. Craig Venter recently said, we got to understand that we are a software-driven species. Change the software, change the species. And why shouldn't we?
All the pieces and parts of your brain, this vastly complicated network of neurons, almost 100 billion neurons, each of which has 10,000 connections to its neighbors. So we're talking 1,000 trillion neurons. It's a...
The problem with these people is they are disconnected from the natural world. Therefore, they don't understand how the natural world works. Because just like when you remove an elephant from its natural born environment and breed it in captivity, when it's done at the zoo, they can't release it back into the wild. Because everything it learned in its natural environment for 1,000 years has been removed. And the same thing has happened to these humans. And that's why they don't understand what they are actually doing.
Of such complexity that it bankrupts our language, but fundamentally it's only 3 pounds and we've got it cornered and it's right there and it's a physical system. The computational hypothesis of brain function suggests that the physical wetware isn't the stuff that matters. It's what are the algorithms that are running on top of the wetware. In other words, what is the brain actually doing? What's it implementing software-wise? Hypothetically, we should be able to take the physical stuff of the brain and reproduce what it's doing, in other words, reproduce its software on other substrates. So we could take your brain and reproduce it out of beer cans and tennis balls, and it would still run just fine. And if we said, hey, how are you feeling in there? This beer can tennis ball machine would say, oh, I'm feeling fine, it's a little cold, whatever. It's also hypothetically a possibility that we could copy your brain and reproduce it in silica, which means on a computer in zeros and ones, actually run the simulation of your brain.
The initial steps are, once again, being made. At Caltech, for example, they've been able to take a mouse brain and look at a certain part of the brain where memories are processed. Memories are processed at the very center of our brain, and they've been able to duplicate the functions of that with a chip. So again, this does not mean that we can encode memories with a chip, but it does mean that we've been able to take the information storage of a mouse brain and have a silicon chip duplicate those functions. And so was mouse consciousness created in the process? I don't know. I don't know whether a mouse is conscious or not, but it does mean that at least in principle, maybe it's possible to transfer our consciousness and at some point maybe even become immortal.
The challenges of reproducing a brain can't be underestimated. It would take something like a zettabyte of computational capacity to run a simulation of a human brain. And that is the entire computational capacity of our planet right now. There's a lot of debate about whether we'll get to a simulation of a human brain in 50 years or 500 years, but those are probably the bounds. It's going to happen somewhere in there. It opens up the whole universe for us because, these meat puppets that we come to the table with aren't any good for interstellar travel.
So I'll end it with this. Nobody wants to notice.
Mother Nature gave us something that's richer than our imagination.
We saw a very peculiar pattern.
Never seen anything like this before.
I remember him saying, remember this word, CRISPR.
We've never had the ability to change the fundamental chemical nature of who we are, and now we do. And what do we do with that? Biggest doctor told me, just hold on, there's something coming.
You can actually use CRISPR to change DNA. You can actually do it.
We could engineer a single gene that could potentially make us all more muscular. But should we make that universally available?
Что человек может создавать человека, человек, который может воевать без страха и без боли. И вот то, о чем я сейчас сказал, может быть страшнее ядерной бомбы.
Should we really be manipulating the heredity of future generations, given our lack of knowledge about so many things?
I don't know where you draw the line between not having albinism and deciding your kid needs to be an extra foot taller so they can be a good oarsman and go to Yale. Where is that line? Who's going to draw that?
Anything that would stop my child from suffering, I'm for.
Draw this ethical line wherever you want, but don't draw it in front of my disease.
What does that mean for the science, where we have the capacity to edit in some things that we think are important? Are we playing God?
You don't realize it's disruptive until you look backward. Often you don't realize that you're in the middle of a revolution until after the revolution has occurred.
Often you don't realize you're in the middle of a revolution until after the revolution has occurred.